Hi, I'm Lhadon.
And I'm Tendor, and this is Our Nation.
News and analysis on the state of Tibet. Today we have three stories that we'll be discussing. One about a press conference in Lhasa in Tibet. Another about comments made by the Dalai Lama today in Germany on the situation inside Tibet. And at the end of our show, we'll be talking about Lobsang Tenzing, another hero we're profiling, a hero of the Tibetan resistance over the last 50 years. So I will just go right to the news from Tibet. The Chinese state media is reporting a press conference in Lhasa, which we can't really probably call a press conference because I think it was only attended by Chinese state media. So a government press conference where Nima Tsering, who's the vice chair of the Standing Committee of the Tibetan Autonomous Regional People's Congress, answered questions and gave information about the number of Tibetans that they've formally charged or convicted, over what they call the Lhasa violence, meaning the uprising, the protests that took place last year. They're saying 76 people have been convicted. At the same time, they're admitting at least 950 Tibetans have been detained since the uprisings last year. And so I think it's safe to say if they're admitting 950, probably the number is 2, 3, or more times that, the real number. They're not saying what really people are being charged with or how long they'll be held or where they're being held. But safe to say that we have, some thousands of Tibetans who've been detained or who have simply gone missing inside Tibet since last March, which is, of course, very disturbing and sort of haunts, I think, every Tibetan around the world. Now, it's interesting, Nima Tsering discusses the situation inside Tibet, and basically he says, Tibetans are enjoying a good life. Tibetan people are enjoying a good life now. And there's no reason for them, and he discusses openly this No Losar campaign. There's no reason for Tibetans to forego celebrating their traditional holiday this year. Basically, this is New York City, sorry. We always have a little extra background noise here in New York. Anyway, he says, essentially, everything in Tibet is back on track. That's the quote. Religious events have remained normal. And they even brought out in this press conference a young Tibetan monk from the Jokang temple who spoke at the press conference. Now, this is interesting. This is a monk who was part of the group that interrupted last year a state-guided media tour. Basically, after the uprisings started in Tibet, when the Chinese government thought they had things back under control, they brought in a group of foreign journalists, because of course journalists were clamoring to get into Tibet. They tried to strictly control their movements and the picture that these journalists would see of Tibet and of Lhasa, and tried to show only their sort of spin on events. And a group of monks from the Jokang monastery or temple in the heart of Lhasa, the most sort of precious and holy temple for Tibetans, a group of monks risked everything to sort of break into the proceedings, the guided tour, and they spoke out openly, saying that they're not free. They were crying. It was really moving if you've seen the footage.
So he's one of those monks.
One of these monks, Namgyal, they call him Non-Gyal, I'm assuming it's Namgyal, basically was brought into the press conference, and basically he admitted that he, quote, was misled by a group of people to disrupt the media group, falsifying, saying that the authorities had killed more than 100 people in Lhasa. He then goes on to say, I was neither taken into custody nor punished. My life and religious study have been normal. So I think we can see the Chinese authorities, very nervously and directly responding to and trying to control the story from inside Tibet as we approach a very tense situation with Losar, or the movement for No Losar in Tibet, No Losar celebrations, as well as March 10th anniversary and the Serf Emancipation Day, which we told you about earlier.
And we also wanted to tell you about His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who is in Germany right now, and some of the things that he has said to the media there. And we all know that usually the Dalai Lama himself, he's very moderate in the words that he chooses to describe the Tibet situation. and he doesn't get easily flustered, or he doesn't use strong words unless in the most extreme kind of situation. So right now, when Tibetans come from Tibet, if there are people who are able to leave or send information out before they go to the media, they actually go to the Dalai Lama, because he is their teacher, their leader. He's the one person whom they most care about.
Mm-hmm.
So he has been hearing, the Dalai Lama has been hearing from sources that the situation inside is very, very tense and very, very, very difficult right now, and people are feeling really frustrated. And to quote the Dalai Lama, "Today there is too much anger. The situation is very tense. It is so tense that the Chinese military have their hands on the trigger when they carry weapons. So long as there is a Chinese military presence, there will be tension." He also said, "Since public execution is difficult, they use torture when Tibetans are detained. As soon as people are arrested, they use torture, and sometimes they kill them." And the AFP article goes on to say, the Dalai Lama said Wednesday his information about the situation in Tibet came from Tibetan groups or individuals who come to see me when they leave Tibet. So this is exactly our deepest kind of fear at the same time, because as much as we are aware that things inside are getting worse and worse every day, to actually see evidence of how bad things are and to hear the Dalai Lama speak openly about his fears and his deepest concerns sort of reinforces our feeling on how difficult the situation is inside and how much suffering people are going through right now.
Yeah, I think it's so obvious when the Chinese government and the authorities in Tibet hold a press conference saying how normal everything is and how fine things are, then it's safe to say they're not, and that they're worried.
Exactly.
And when they say things like everything is fine and there's no reason, they go on about there's no reason for Tibetans not to celebrate because they're having such a happy life. We hope for peace and stability in Lhasa. However, some people don't want to see Lhasa enjoy economic growth, and they don't want to see people enjoy a happy life. And they reference...
They're talking about us?
They're talking about us. They're talking about His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. They're basically, their response is always to turn things on their head and say, black is white, the sky is, the earth is the sky. I mean, they ultimately turn everything upside down. So safe to say things inside Tibet are very tense, and we're very concerned about what might happen there in the coming days and weeks.
And as you know, we are SFTs profiling some of the many heroes that Tibetan resistance has produced, and we're profiling 50 people in the lead up to March 10th this year. And we have already profiled a number of luminaries, giants in the Tibetan resistance movement, like Gompo Tashi, Ama Ade, Champa Tenzin, and today we are profiling Lobsang Tenzin.
Yeah, he's a 27-year-old former student of Tibet University, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment in March 91. He was arrested actually in March 1988, and he was implicated as the, quote, principal culprit in the death of a People's Armed Police officer, a PAP officer, during the demonstrations in Lhasa in March 88.
And he was also one of the prisoners involved in trying to hand over a petition to U.S. ambassador to China at that time, James Lilly. So he's still in jail, and according to some former political prisoners who have now reached India, they're saying that his sentence has been reduced to 18 years. He's still in jail. People don't have enough information about how he's doing, about his health, his welfare, but our prayers go out to him and the many other brave Tibetans who are out there, especially among the younger generation.
You can see more of these profiles online, and you can actually download a widget that will automatically update the 50-day profiles, the countdown, and you can find those on our blog, tibetwillbefree.org.
You can also find them at SFT website, studentsforafreetibet.org.
And that's it for now. Thanks for joining us again, and send us your thoughts, your comments, and we'll see you again tomorrow. This is Our Nation, all news and analysis on the state of Tibet.